We are now going to look at the huge influence of AI on global capital markets, and we're going to be hearing from Commissioner Kristin Johnson from the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission. Kristin was sworn in 2022 following unanimous Senate confirmation. She is a nationally and internationally recognized expert on financial markets regulation, derivatives, and emerging technologies, including AI and blockchain, a former professor and a seasoned attorney in global finance. Commissioner Johnson brings deep legal and policy expertise to today's discussions. We're very honored to have her with us. So please, can you give her a very warm welcome?
Good afternoon. I'm Kristin Johnson. I'm a commissioner of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, appointed by President Biden and confirmed unanimously by the United States Senate. Since that time, I've continued to serve. That was March 2022. I've continued to serve in this role, and last year had the great distinction of being nominated as the first woman and the first woman of color to be nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Treasury for the Financial Institutions Group. Today, though, I'd like to talk to you about something that I think is critical and top of mind, not just to financial market regulators, but to investors, customers, and I would argue, all of us who are thoughtful about the structure, integrity, and stability of financial markets. Before I go further, I should share that my remarks today are my own. They reflect my views and not the views of my fellow commissioners, the United States Commodity Futures Trading Commission, commission staff, or the government. I'm delighted to be here with you to talk about artificial intelligence in financial markets. To say that AI is the center and core of hype and a mega trend is an understatement. Long before I was a commissioner at the US Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the federal agency charged with oversight of derivatives markets, I spent time as an academic, as a professor, and also as a lawyer in private practice, studying, exploring, and thinking carefully about the integration of innovation in financial markets. Today, I'm excited to share with you some of the areas that I think are really critical for us to think about in terms of artificial intelligence and its integration in financial markets. I think that no matter where you find yourself in the spectrum of touching markets, whether it's from the perspective of a retiree who's invested in a very large pension fund or another institutional investor, or if you're at that institutional investor engaged in asset management or portfolio management, if you're explicitly overseeing a specific class of assets on behalf of a fund or on behalf of a large financial institution, I think there's something important in what I'm about to share, because I believe this touches, like as AI does generally, many aspects of our lives in society. Understanding new technologies and their potential has been a passion for a tremendous period of my career. I strongly believe that there are many opportunities for market participants to use technologies to bring efficiencies to markets. There are two specific spaces that we are thoughtful about at the CFTC related to the integration of AI in our markets. One is compliance, and the other is surveillance. Compliance is an area that was recognized early on as promising for the use case of AI. In financial markets, as our financial market regulation is structured in the US and for many of our counterparts here in the UK, across Europe, and around the world, there are significant obligations for reporting and indication that one is in compliance with regulation that are imposed on market participants. These regulations are intended to enable our market regulation to ensure the integrity and stability of financial markets. AI compliance use cases have been identified in a number of contexts across financial markets. In fact, when we engage significant industry trade associations. One of the things that we find is that those trade associations themselves are engaged in surveys and conversations with their member organizations about the extent to which AI is effectively being adopted, right? And I would distinguish that effective adoption from the hype around AI or from very superficial integration of AI that has not truly penetrated into the operational infrastructure of industry. So in the context of member organization International Institute of Finance, many of you will be familiar with the IIF, their annual survey has asked how specifically banking institutions are integrating AI into their markets. It's no surprise that banking institutions take a conservative perspective generally as they integrate AI. And their integration of AI, curiously, has long been adopted in many other contexts. For example, predictive analytics and forecasting are two spaces or areas where we've regularly seen deep penetration of AI in our markets. However, the penetration of AI in other areas is more superficial. Compliance, however, may be the exception to the rule. The potential for AI, and here I'm not simply referring to supervised and unsupervised machine learning algorithms, I'm thinking more beyond that, even beyond neural networks. So here, the reference is to generative AI or agentic AI. And the use of agentic or generative AI for compliance seems uniquely promising. Take, for example, the case of anti-money laundering or careful evaluation to survey and prevent the financing of terrorism. We would call these KYC obligations in the space where I sit, and the obligation to ensure AML or KYC compliance is an obligation that sits with every type of financial institution in our ecosystem. The potential for AI-based compliance platforms to facilitate efficient, reduced cost, and more effective AML and KYC compliance is critical. How specifically? Well, AML and KYC sanctions compliance-oriented oversight enables, or at least the AI platforms, enable large sets of data detecting anomalies, flagging suspicious activities, verifying customer identities, and ensuring compliance with the Bank Secrecy Act in the United States. There are other numerous adoptions of AI for front office and back office support, depending on where you sit in the financial markets ecosystem. The IOSCO, or International Organization of Securities Commissions, their recent report, a consultation on AI in capital markets, identified a number of additional effective adoptive use cases for AI compliance. These include customer onboarding, due diligence, and any number of reporting obligations that individual firms have under the regulations pursuant to which they're governed. These identified use cases are just a handful of the compliance-based use cases that I believe demonstrate positive potential for the integration of AI. Let me talk just a little bit about trade surveillance, a specific space that is germane to our markets as derivatives regulators, and also to our cohort, the Securities Exchange Commission, in their oversight of capital markets. This is an area that we recognize as critical to market regulators across the globe. It's an area also where we spend a tremendous amount of time, and I spend a tremendous amount of energy visiting with regulators in all parts of the world and talking through how AI and or other platforms, trade-based surveillance can facilitate oversight of markets. So to this end, I've been to Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Dubai, Thailand, and a number of other countries, essentially sitting with local regulators for the purpose of facilitating a conversation, an education, if you will, on how we have integrated AI into our supervisory oversight of markets. Trade surveillance is one of those critical spaces. So by trade surveillance, I'm referring to our obligations imposed on market participants to ensure that as they look across financial markets on any given day, there are no anomalies in trading that we could point to that might present evidence of fraud or manipulation in our markets. This obligation rests at the firm level for every entity that's registered with the CFTC. It also rests at the intermediary level for every exchange or clearinghouse that enables and facilitates trading, settlement, and clearing in our market ecosystem. This is a pretty critical three-layered system, right? So I talked about two layers, one being entity level, one being intermediary level. The third level is our oversight. So now you can see there's sort of three layers of protection that are integrated for purposes of overseeing the integrity of our markets. There are opportunities to integrate AI at each of those three levels. And I believe the opportunities to integrate AI for trade surveillance at each of the three levels actually enhances the health and integrity of our markets. I'd layer on one additional set of issues that I think are really critical and for which our United States Department of Treasury published a great report last year, and that's issues at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity. I don't doubt that there's not a single person in this room who hasn't spent significant time in whichever boardrooms or strategic planning committees you sit on, thinking about the impact of cyber risks, in particular cyber fraud or cyber attacks and cyber intrusions. In the context of cyber, I've spent a significant amount of my time as a commissioner directing the Commission's efforts to thinking carefully about how we can proactively promote cyber resilience. It's a critical element, I believe, to the health and infrastructure of our markets. AI creates real opportunities for bad actors to pair all of their learning in the AI space with cyber threats and cyber intrusions. In other words, our cyber defenses are vulnerable and face significant weaknesses. And in the absence of thoughtfulness about how to reinforce protection against cyber threats, AI creates potential concerns for our markets. Finally, I want to say just a few words about the reality that AI is interesting, but certainly worthy of our thoughtfulness as we integrate and adopt AI platforms. In particular, over the last several years, I've been raising questions about data integrity and data security, as well as data privacy and the potential for AI to generate or hardwire bias into our systems. Beyond these concerns, all of which I know that you've spent time talking with others about, I'm also equally concerned about data leakages and the potential as we move from generative AI to agentic AI for there to be, as a result of the adoption or use of synthetic data sets, hallucinations and other disruptions that come quite naturally from how agentic AI training models are developed. I offer up these final cautionary reflections quickly, not because they don't deserve more time. In fact, they absolutely do. And my aspiration as I continue in public service and well beyond will be to continue to highlight these issues for everyone across our financial markets ecosystem. I don't think that there's a single issue I've mentioned that isn't already top of mind for most of you. Nonetheless, I raise these questions not because I have immediate solutions, but because I'm on a journey, I hope, with each of you to think carefully about how we can contribute to the conversation that enables us to capture the benefits of AI while mitigating any potential risks. I'm so grateful for the time to join you today. I'm so excited to be here in this absolutely beautiful space. I look forward to seeing those of you who are able to join for the dinner. Have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you for having me.